Snow fell like white ash over the Apache lands, erasing paths and smothering sound. Nayeli stumbled forward, her buckskin dress crackling with ice, fingers blue and numb. 3 days separated from her family, the blizzard had become her only companion. When she collapsed near the sacred spring, her breath formed ghosts that disappeared into the darkness. Chaskay found her there, the medicine man's weathered face tightening at the sight of the stranger on forbidden's ground. Tribal law was clear about outsiders, especially near the healing waters. But when her eyes fluttered open, and she whispered, "Please warn me, sir. I'm all alone." Something ancient stirred within him. Could this frozen woman be the wanderer from the old prophecy? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning had begun like all others for Chaskay. Before the first light touched the mountains, he had risen from his sleeping mat, reaching for the medicine pouch that never left his side. The small leather bag, worn smooth by decades of handling, contained herbs, stones, and tokens that connected him to the spirit world. His weathered fingers traced the intricate beadwork as he whispered the morning prayer, just as he had done every day since becoming the tribe's medicine man 30 winters ago. His dwelling stood apart from the others, positioned between the village and the sacred spring that had drawn the Apache people to this valley generations ago. Isolation was both his privilege and his burden as keeper of ancient knowledge. The elders had chosen him as a boy when he dreamed of healing herbs before knowing their names. When he spoke to hawks and they seemed to answer, smoke curled from the small fire pit as Chaskay prepared a tea of juniper and sage. Through the open doorway, he observed dark clouds gathering over the distant peaks. The air carried the sharp scent of approaching snow, but beneath it lay something else, a disturbance in the natural order that made the hairs on his neck rise. Something was coming with this storm. White death approaches, he murmured, using the old name for the most severe winter storms. He had seen only 2 in his lifetime. Both had claimed lives. Adding another stick to his fire, Chaskay recalled the warning from Nayeli, the eldest of the tribal council. The winter spirits grow restless. She had told him 3 nights ago, her blind eyes seeming to see beyond the physical world. They seek to reclaim what was once promised them. An old tale, one Chaskay had dismissed as a story to keep children close to home during blizzards. Yet Nayeli's warnings seldom proved hollow. A sharp cry from above drew his attention. A red-tailed hawk circled his dwelling 3 times before heading north, an omen requiring interpretation. Chaskay reached for his divination stones, casting them upon a flat rock beside his fire. The pattern confirmed his unease. Change approached on the storm's edge. For several days, his dreams had been haunted by a stranger's face, a woman with eyes that held both fear and determination. The vision always ended the same way. The woman collapsed near the sacred spring, her body surrendering to cold, while a voice whispered that destiny hung in the balance. Chaskay shook his head, trying to dispel the troubling images. His attention turned to organizing healing supplies. The tribe would need them if the storm proved as fierce as the signs suggested. He ground dried willow bark for pain, prepared poultices for frostbite, and set water to boil for purification rituals. From the village came the sounds of preparation, families securing dwellings, gathering firewood, bringing livestock into sheltered areas. Children's laughter still punctuated the air, unaware of the danger approaching. Medicine Man. The voice at his doorway belonged to Makia, a younger man who had studied healing arts under Chaskay's reluctant guidance. Talented but impatient, Makia possessed skill without wisdom, a dangerous combination. The chief asks if you have seen anything in the signs about this storm. Chaskay noted Makia's eager expression. The younger man hungered for position, for the respect Chaskay had earned through decades of service. Tell him it brings more than snow, Chaskay replied, deliberately vague. He had learned long ago to guard his visions, especially from those who might misuse them. Makia lingered, eyes drifting to the medicine pouch. And the sacred spring? Should it be protected? An unusual question. The spring needed no protection. It was a protector itself, the lifeblood of their people. No one approaches the sacred waters during White Death, Chaskay said firmly. Remind the people of the law. The spring is forbidden to all but me until the storm passes. After Makia departed, Chaskay stood in his doorway, watching the sky darken. The first snowflakes began to fall, gentle as feathers. They would not remain gentle for long. His hand tightened around his medicine pouch. The stranger from his dreams would arrive with this storm. Of this he was certain. What remained unclear was whether her coming would bring salvation or destruction to his people. 3 days earlier, Nayeli had walked confidently alongside her family, the carved wooden amulet bouncing against her chest with each step. The small pendant, passed down through generations of women in her family, was her most treasured possession. Her grandmother had placed it around her neck on her 10th birthday, whispering that the symbols carved into its surface held power beyond understanding. One day, these markings will guide you to your destiny, the old woman had said. Nayeli had not understood then. She was beginning to now. Her people, a small band of Apache who lived in the shadow of the eastern mountains, had begun their annual migration to winter grounds. The journey was familiar 4 days of travel through valleys and across streams, now turning to ice. Nayeli's father, a respected hunter, led the way while her mother ensured the younger children kept pace. That morning, the sky had been clear, giving no hint of what approached. By midday, dark clouds had rolled in with unnatural speed. The elders frowned, speaking in hushed tones about bad omens. Nayeli's dreams the previous night had been filled with swirling snow and a stranger's face, man with eyes that seemed to look through her rather than at her. Stay close, her mother had warned as visibility diminished. But when the first violent winds hit, chaos erupted. The group scattered seeking shelter, supplies tumbling from travois, children crying out in fear. Nayeli had turned to help a young cousin when a wall of white separated them. "Mother," she called, her voice swallowed by the howling storm. "Father." No answer came. Only white silence. For hours she had huddled beneath a rocky overhang, waiting for the storm to pass. It did not. When movement became necessary to prevent freezing, Nayeli had pushed forward, hoping to find her family or at least shelter. The first night alone was the worst. Burrowed beneath pine boughs, shivering uncontrollably, she clutched her amulet and prayed to the ancestors for guidance. In fitful sleep, dreams came again clearer this time. A spring surrounded by stones, a dwelling with smoke rising from its center, a man with medicine symbols painted on his face dotted dawn. A red fox appeared, watching her with intelligent eyes before trotting northward, stopping to look back as if expecting her to follow. Having no better direction, Nayeli did. The fox led her to a stream not yet frozen, where she could drink and gather strength. On the second day, as her strength waned, the amulet began to feel strangely warm against her skin. Examining it closely, Nayeli noticed one symbol glowing faintly, a spiral connected to a straight line. Her grandmother had called it the path to healing waters. The fox appeared again, now joined by a hawk circling overhead. The coincidence was too great to ignore. Animal guides were sacred messengers, her grandmother had taught. When the spirits send two messengers of different realms, their guidance is urgent. By the third day, Nayeli's lips were cracked and bleeding. Her footsteps became uncertain, her mind clouded. The blizzard showed no signs of weakening. The amulet pulsed with warmth, the only heat against her frozen skin. Her provisions gone, her water skin empty, Death walked beside her Nawe, companion as real as the fox that still appeared intermittently through the swirling snow. When sunset approached, the storm briefly lessened. Through a momentary clearing, Nayeli spotted a faint glow in the distance. Using her last reserves of strength, she pushed toward it. The snow beneath her feet changed texture. She had entered a clearing. Through half-frozen eyelashes, she made out stone markers arranged in a circle. At the center, a small pool steamed in defiance of the cold the spring from her dreams. Relief flooded her even as her legs gave way. As consciousness faded, her fingers clutched the amulet that had guided her here. Its final warmth spread through her chest as darkness claimed her vision. The last thing Nayeli registered was the crunch of approaching footsteps through snow and the silhouette of a man against the dying light. Chaskay stood motionless, struggling to reconcile the woman before him with tribal law. No outsiders were permitted near the sacred spring. This was absolute. Yet here she lay, exactly as his visions had foretold, half buried in snow at the spring's edge. Her breath came in shallow gasps, each one producing less vapor than the last. Without intervention, she would not survive another hour. The woman's dark hair was crusted with ice, her buckskin dress frozen stiff. Her fingers, curled around something at her neck, had turned an alarming shade of blue. "She is not your concern," Chaskay told himself, though the words sounded hollow. "The law is clear." A whisper rose from the spring, so faint he might have imagined it. "Some laws are younger than wisdom." The voice belonged to no living person. It carried the timbre of ancestors long past. Chaskay had heard such voices only twice before in his life, at moments when the future of the tribe hung in balance. Decision made, he knelt beside the woman. Her skin felt like ice beneath his fingers as he checked for signs of life. A pulse fluttered weakly at her throat. Gathering her in his arms, surprised at how little she weighed, he carried her toward his dwelling dock. As they crossed the boundary of sacred ground, a sharp pain lanced through his chest, the spiritual price for his transgression. Chaskay grimaced, but did not falter. Whatever consequence came, he would bear it. Inside his dwelling, he laid her near the fire. Working methodically, he removed her frozen outer garments, wrapped her in warm hides, and began the treatment for deep cold, first warming the core, then the limbs, last the extremities. To warm her too quickly would kill her as surely as the cold. The woman's breathing gradually strengthened. As Chaskay worked, he noticed the object clutched in her hand, a carved amulet of distinctive design. His hands froze in recognition. The spiral path symbol matched an ancient marking in his medicine texts, one associated with a prophecy he had studied, but never fully understood. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and glazed with fever. "Please warm me, sir," she whispered again, the words slurring. "I'm all alone." "You are not alone now," Chaskay replied, though uncertain she could hear him. Her next words sent ice through his veins, not from cold, but from recognition. "The healing waters call to the wanderer when balance falters." These were words from the ancient text words she could not possibly know. A sound at the doorway drew his attention. Makia stood watching, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "You bring an outsider to your dwelling?" Makia's voice carried neither accusation nor surprise, only careful observation. "She would have died," Chaskay replied simply. "The law. I know the law." Chaskay cut him off. "I will answer to the council when the storm passes." Makia's gaze lingered on the woman. "Who is she?" "I do not know." It was truth, yet felt like deception. Somehow, Chaskay felt he had always known her, or been meant to know her. "The elders will not be pleased." Makia stepped back into the swirling snow. "I cannot keep this knowledge from them." "Do what you must," Chaskay said, turning back to his patient. After Makia departed, Chaskay reached for his medicine pouch. From it, He withdrew herbs for fever and infection, common remedies permitted for any patient. His hand hesitated over a small clay bottle containing water from the sacred spring's deepest pool, reserved only for tribal members of highest standing. Using it on an outsider would be his second transgression, more serious than the first. The woman's breathing hitched, growing more labored. Without the spring water, she might not survive until morning. Chaskay closed his eyes, listening for guidance. When the wanderer comes, old boundaries must yield to new beginnings. The ancestral voice again, clearer now. Chaskay uncorked the bottle, his decision made. Whatever path this action set him upon, he would walk it without regret. Dawn arrived with no break in the storm. From the village center came a sound that chilled Chaskay more than the bitter wind, the resonant boom of the elders' warning drum. For generations, this sacred instrument had hung silent in the council lodge, to be sounded only when tribal laws were broken. Its voice carried through snow and stone, a rebuke that all would recognize. They knew. Chaskay had expected this. Makya would have gone directly to the elders. The drum confirmed that they viewed his actions as serious enough to warrant public notification, even during White Death. The woman, he still did not know her name, had survived the night, though barely. The sacred water had prevented death, but her condition remained grave. Frost had damaged her hands and feet. Without proper healing, she might never walk properly again. Chaskay sat back on his heels, exhaustion settling into his bones. He had not slept, maintaining the fire at perfect strength, applying poultices, administering teas when she could swallow. Now came the harder task-preparing medicines that were expressly forbidden to share with outsiders. As a boy of 12, Chaskay had knelt before the tribal council, his heart pounding with pride. The chief had placed the medicine man's ceremonial headdress upon his brow, unexpectedly heavy with responsibility. Do you swear to preserve our sacred knowledge, sharing it only with our people, keeping it from all outsiders until your final breath? I swear, he had answered, his young voice cracking with emotion. For 40 years, he had kept that oath unbroken. Until now, the woman stirred, her fever-bright eyes opening. This time, they focused on his face. Where am I? Her voice was a dry whisper. You are safe, Chaskay replied, offering water. The storm continues. She drank weakly. My family... When the storm passes, we will search for them. The distant drum sounded again. The woman flinched at the noise. What is that? Chaskay hesitated. A warning. Because of me, she said. Not a question. He did not deny it. What is your name, Nayeli? She touched the amulet at her throat. And you are the medicine man from my dreams. Before Chaskay could respond, a sharp pain lanced through his chest stronger than before. The spiritual consequence of his broken oath. He masked his grimace, but Nayeli's gaze sharpened. You're in pain, she observed, because you helped me. Her perception was unsettling. Few could read him so easily. Rest, he instructed, turning away to hide his discomfort. At his medicine shelf, he reached for ingredients rarely used: eagle root for deep healing, velth moss for restoring strength, and finally, the red clay that could only be gathered under full moon from the spring's sacred bank. Mixing these four, an outsider would sever his spiritual connection more permanently. The pain in his chest might become constant. Some medicine men who broke their oaths lost their healing abilities entirely. Memory surfaced his teacher's enigmatic words years ago. The strongest healing comes not from plants or stones, but from the choice to heal when healing costs. You most. Outside, the wind shifted. Through the smoke hole, Chaskay glimpsed a break in the clouds. Sunlight briefly illuminated his dwelling, and with it, something impossible. On the ground just outside his door lay a small bundle of rare white sage, its leaves perfectly preserved despite the storm. This healing herb grew only on distant mountaintops, inaccessible until spring. Yet here it was, the exact ingredient needed for Nayeli's treatment. The drum sounded a third time as Chaskay retrieved the sage. Its message was clear. Judgment approached. But the gift outside his door carried another message, one from older, deeper powers than tribal law. Chaskay began grinding the herbs, his decision crystallizing with each movement. He would heal this woman completely, regardless of cost. Something profound was unfolding, something that transcended the laws of men. The talking stick moved from hand to hand around the council fire, carved from lightning-struck oak and adorned with eagle feathers. It gave each holder the right to speak without interruption, a tradition older than any living memory. Though the storm still raged beyond the lodge walls, urgent matters could not wait. Chaskay has brought an outsider among us, Elder Kitchi said, his voice heavy with concern. Not just among us, but to the sacred spring itself. Makya sat slightly apart, his expression carefully neutral, though satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. I witnessed this with my own eyes. The woman lay unconscious at the spring's edge. Chaskay carried her to his dwelling. A talking stick passed to Nayeli, the blind elder whose visions were respected above all others. Her weathered hands caressed the polished wood, as if reading messages through her fingertips. The old stories speak of a time when a stranger would come during White Death, she said, her clouded eyes fixed on nothing, yet seeming to see everything. One who carries markings of the ancient covenant. Skeptical murmurs circled the fire. These old legends were rarely discussed. Superstition, scoffed Kitchi. Chaskay has violated our most sacred law. The penalty is clear banishment. During White Death? That would be a death sentence, objected Taima, a younger council member. And what of the woman? Would you cast her back into the storm as well? The chief, Helaku, had remained silent, listening. Now he reached for the talking stick. The lodge fell quiet. No judgment will be passed until both storm and spirits calm, he declared. When White Death retreats, we will hear Chaskay's words and examine this stranger. Until then, they remain isolated. No one approaches his dwelling. Makya leaned forward. Chief Helaku, what of the medicine man's duties? The storm has brought injuries. Children suffer from cough. It was a calculated question. Without Chaskay's healing skills, the tribe would struggle. Halaku's gaze sharpened. You have studied the healing arts for 7 years, Makya. Can you not tend to basic needs? I can, Makya replied, not quite concealing his eagerness. But certain medicines are known only to Chaskay. Then we will manage without them for now. As the council dispersed, whispers spread throughout the snowbound village. Children, huddled in family dwellings, traded fantastical stories about the mysterious ice woman with magical powers. Some claimed she controlled the blizzard. Others insisted she was a spirit in human form. My father says she'll bring sickness to us all, declared one boy, his eyes wide. My grandmother says she's part of a prophecy, countered a girl, that she and Chaskay together will save us from something worse than the storm. The adults' conversations were more measured, but no less divided. Some defended Chaskay's compassion. Others feared the breaking of sacred taboos. Long-buried tensions surfaced between those who valued tradition above all and those who believed in adaptation for survival. Outside the village boundaries, nature itself seemed to reflect this division. Unnatural patterns appeared in the snowfall. Animals behaved strangely, wolves howling in daylight, eagles circling in impossible winds. The elders interpreted these signs according to their own beliefs, finding either omens of disaster or promises of renewal. At his own dwelling, Chief Helaku consulted privately with his most trusted advisor, the aging warrior Tarek. The tribe fractures over this, Tarek observed. Old grievances resurface. Yes, Helaku stared into the fire. Chaskay has forced a reckoning. The question is whether it comes at the right time or the wrong one. And the prophecy Nayeli mentioned? Heliku's expression grew troubled. If true, we face something far more complex than a simple breaking of law. The legends speak of great upheaval when the healer and wanderer meet. You believe these stories? The chief tossed a handful of sacred herbs into the flames, watching as they flared blue-green, a sign of spiritual significance. I believe we stand at a crossing of paths, he said finally. What concerns me most is not what Chaskay has done, but what Nakia might do in response. Ambition mixed with resentment is a dangerous medicine. 3 days passed before Nayeli truly awakened. The fever broke during the night, leaving her weak but clear-minded. Dawn light filtered through the smoke hole of Chaskay's dwelling, illuminating a dream catcher hanging directly above her sleeping place. The intricately woven web, adorned with beads and feathers, seemed to pulse with a faint blue light, though when she blinked, the glow vanished. She attempted to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her frost-damaged limbs. Slowly came a deep voice from across the dwelling. Your body remembers the cold. Chaskay sat cross-legged by a small fire, grinding herbs with mortar and pestle. He looked different in daylight, older than she had first thought, with lines of wisdom etched around his eyes, yet possessing a strength that had nothing to do with physical power. How long? Nayeli asked, her voice raspy from disuse. 3 days since I found you. The storm continues, though its fury has lessened. Nayeli took in her surroundings, the neatly arranged medicine shelves, bundles of dried herbs hanging from roof beams, ceremonial items carefully placed on a sacred shelf. A medicine man's dwelling, unmistakably. You saved my life, she said simply. Chaskay nodded once, continuing his work. Can you tell me your name and people? I am Nayeli of the Eastern Mountain Band. We were traveling to winter grounds when the storm separated us. Her hand instinctively sought her amulet, relief washing through her upon finding it still around. Her neck. Your family will shelter in place during such weather, Chaskay assured her. When it passes, we can send word to known winter camps. Thank you. She hesitated. I heard a drum several days ago. It sounded like a warning. Chaskay's hand stilled momentarily. It was. Because of me, Nayeli said, remembering their brief earlier exchange. Because of my choice, he corrected. Our sacred spring is forbidden to outsiders. By bringing you here, I broke tribal law. The implications settled heavily between them. What will happen to you? I will face the council when the storm ends. His tone suggested the matter was closed. Nayeli watched him work, questions forming and dissolving. Finally, she asked the one that seemed most pressing. Why did you do it? Save me, knowing the consequences. Chaskay met her gaze directly for the first time. I had dreams of your coming. When I found you, exactly as I had foreseen, I knew there was purpose in our meeting. His honesty surprised her. I dreamed of you too, she admitted. Of this place, the spring, your dwelling. My grandmother said my dreams hold power. Your grandmother was wise. Chaskay brought her a cup of tea. This will help restore your strength. As their fingers brushed during the exchange, a jolt of energy passed between them. The dream catcher above suddenly blazed with blue light, visible to them both this time. Neither commented on the phenomenon, though both had clearly seen it. My name is Chaskay, he offered, breaking the charged silence. I have been medicine man here for 40 years. The storm, Nayeli said, sipping the bitter tea. It's not natural, is it? His eyebrows rose slightly at her perception. No, we call it White Death, a spirit storm that comes rarely, bringing change and challenge. My people have similar stories. My grandmother called such storms the breath of winter spirits. They fell into conversation about their respective tribes' beliefs, discovering surprising similarities. Nayeli explained her family's role as keepers of stories, while Chaskay described his training as a healer. Time passed unnoticed until a sound at the doorway interrupted them. A young boy stood there, snow dusting his shoulders, eyes wide with fear and curiosity. "Toddy, you should not be here," Chaskay said firmly but gently. "My sister's cough worsens," the boy blurted. "Mother sent me to beg for medicine." His gaze fixed on Nayeli with undisguised fascination. Chaskay quickly gathered herbs into a small pouch. "Tell no one you saw our guest," he instructed, placing the medicine in the boy's hands. After the child departed, Nayeli noticed Chaskay's troubled expression. "I have brought danger to you," she said softly. "No," he replied, looking toward the dream catcher, now dormant again. "I believe you have brought something else entirely. The question is whether my people are ready to receive it." That evening, as Nayeli slept, Chaskay studied her amulet by firelight. She had reluctantly removed it at his request, placing it in his palm with visible unease. "My grandmother said it should never leave my neck," she had explained. "But if you believe it important, ... The carved wooden piece was ancient, its surface worn smooth by generations of handling. The symbols etched into it were unlike typical Apache markings, older, more primal. The spiral path connected to a straight line was only one of several. That stirred recognition in Chaskay's memory. He moved to his medicine shelf, carefully extracting a bundle wrapped in deerskin from behind other texts. Untying the leather cords that bound it, he revealed a brittle piece of bark, flattened and preserved through countless seasons. The ancient bark scroll was the oldest written record his tribe possessed, predating even their arrival in these mountains. Few could read the symbols inscribed upon it. Chaskay had spent decades deciphering its meaning, understanding only portions. Now, comparing the scroll to Nayeli's amulet, patterns emerged that he had previously overlooked. "It cannot be," he whispered, tracing matching symbols with his fingertip. Scrolls spoke of a time when balance would falter, when winter spirits would rise in anger at forgotten promises. It told of two who would restore harmony, the healer from sacred waters and the wanderer guided by dreams. Together, they would renew an ancient covenant through ceremony that had joined their spirits. Chaskay's heart raced as he translated further. Sections previously indecipherable. The amulet's symbols provided context that had been missing. According to the text, the wanderer would come during the most severe winter, would be found near death at the spring's edge, would carry markings. Of the old agreement, Nayeli had fulfilled every condition. A soft voice interrupted his concentration. "You found something." She stood watching him, wrapped in a blanket, her strength visibly returning. "Your amulet," Chaskay said, motioning her closer. "The markings match our oldest written record." Nayeli settled beside him, her shoulder nearly touching his. "My grandmother said it contains a story too important to be spoken aloud. It contains a prophecy." He showed her the matching symbols. "About a healer and a wanderer who together restore balance when winter spirits threaten." "And you believe we are these people?" Her tone held skepticism tinged with wonder. "The coincidences are too precise to dismiss." He indicated specific markings. "The wanderer comes from eastern mountains, bears this exact symbol, is found half frozen during white death at the sacred spring." Nayeli studied the scroll silently. Finally, she said, "In my dreams, for months now, I've seen a spring surrounded by stones, a dwelling with smoke, a man with medicine symbols who would either save or doom my people." She touched the bark gently. "I never believed these dreams were more than dreams. They were guidance," Chaskay said. "As were mine." Outside, the wind changed direction, the first sign the storm might be weakening. Simultaneously, both the scroll and amulet seemed to pulse with faint luminescence, visible even in the firelight. "What does the prophecy say we must do?" Nayeli asked. Before Chaskay could answer, movement caught their attention. Through the doorway's covering, they glimpsed a fox and hawk together, one standing, one perched nearby watching the dwelling. Such a natural companionship between predator and prey sent chills down both their spines. "Animal messengers," Nayeli whispered, "just like those that guided me here." The animals held their position for several heartbeats before disappearing into the night. "The spirits are acknowledging our discovery," Chaskay said, carefully rewrapping the scroll. "The prophecy speaks of a ceremony, a joining of healer and wanderer that will renew forgotten promises to the winter spirits." "What kind of joining?" Nayeli asked, a flush rising to her cheeks. Chaskay hesitated. "The text is unclear, but it suggests a union of both body and spirit." He met her gaze steadily. A permanent bond. Silence stretched between them, filled with implications neither was ready to voice. "We should not rush to assume we understand the prophecy fully," Chaskay finally said, returning her amulet. "Ancient words often carry meanings beyond their surface." Nayeli nodded, replacing the amulet around her neck. "But if true, we have been brought together by forces greater than ourselves." "Yes," Chaskay agreed, "and forces that others may resist with all their might." Dawn of the seventh day brought clear skies. The storm had finally released its grip on the mountains, leaving behind drifts taller than a man and a crystalline silence. By mid-morning, a messenger arrived at Chaskay's dwelling. "The council gathers at midday," the young man announced, carefully avoiding looking directly at Nayeli. "Both of you are summoned." After the messenger departed, Chaskay provided Nayeli with clean clothing, simple but dignified garments befitting an honored guest rather than an intruder. "Speak honestly," he advised as she dressed. "Show respect for our ways without apology for your presence." The council responds to strength tempered with humility. Nayeli nodded, fingers nervously adjusting. Her amulet. Should we tell them about the prophecy? Chaskay considered this, not unless directly questioned. Some will see it as superstition, others as convenient invention. Their walk through the village became a gauntlet of stairs. Children peeked from doorways, some pointing, others waving. Shyly, adults stood in small groups, conversations hushing as the pair passed. Nayeli held her head high, though Chaskay noted her hands trembling slightly. The council lodge stood at the village center, a large circular structure adorned with symbols of the tribe's 7 clans. Inside, the tribal council waited, 7 elders including Blind the Gila, Chief Helaku, and 5 clan representatives. Makya stood to one side, not a council member, but present as witness. 24 villagers crowded the lodge's perimeter, spectators. To this unusual proceeding, dot at the center lay the justice feather, a massive eagle, feather mounted on a base of polished stone. The sacred object was brought forth only when judgments of great consequence were rendered. Chief Helaku opened the proceedings, his deep voice filling the lodge. "Chaskay, medicine man of our people for 40 winters, you stand accused of violating sacred law by bringing an outsider to the healing spring and sharing forbidden knowledge. How do you answer?" Chaskay stepped forward, speaking with measured dignity. "I found this woman, Nayeli of the eastern mountain Apache, near death at the spring's edge. The choice before me was clear. Uphold the letter of our law and let her die, or honor the spirit of our ways by preserving life." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elder Kichi spoke harshly. "Our laws regarding the spring are absolute. They protect sacred knowledge passed through generations." "With respect, Elder," Chaskay replied, "our oldest teachings place life above all other considerations." "Would you have me become a murderer through inaction?" The question hung in the air until Elder Nahila's soft voice broke the silence. "Let the strangers speak." All eyes turned to Nayeli. Standing straight despite her lingering weakness, she addressed the council with clear, respectful tones. I am Nayeli, daughter of Natan, story keeper of the Eastern Mountain Band. Our peoples share ancestors, though our paths diverged generations ago. I did not seek your sacred spring. I was separated from my family during the storm, and guided there by forces beyond my understanding. She touched her amulet. I offer gratitude for my life and apology for any disruption my presence has caused. Nahila leaned forward. That amulet, may I touch it? Hesitantly, Nayeli approached the blind elder, kneeling to place the wooden pendant in her weathered hands. Nahila's fingers traced the carvings, her clouded eyes widening. These are the old markings, she whispered, from before the separation of our peoples. Chief Heliku leaned closer. What do you mean, Nayeli? This is a keeper's amulet, the elder explained, given only to those who preserve our oldest stories. Her fingers continued exploring the symbols. Tell me, child, have you had dreams of this place? Of our medicine man? Nayeli glanced at Chaskay before answering. Yes, for many moons before the storm came. A charged silence filled the lodge. Makya stepped forward uninvited. Dreams and carvings change nothing, he declared. The law was broken. There must be consequences. Chief Helaku raised the justice feather, silencing further discussion. I have heard enough for now. The council will deliberate. He addressed Chaskay and Nayeli directly. Until judgment is rendered, you both remain confined to the medicine man's dwelling. Nayeli of the Eastern Mountain Band is granted temporary guest rights. She may not be harmed, but neither may she move freely among us. As they were escorted out, Chaskay noticed the divided expressions among the villagers. Some showed sympathy, others suspicion. The tribe was fracturing over their case, exactly as the prophecy had foretold. In the days following the council meeting, strange phenomena began occurring throughout the village. Snow melted in perfect circles outside certain dwellings. The sacred spring, normally crystal clear, took on a blue-green hue that changed intensity throughout the day. Eagles appeared in unprecedented numbers, circling overhead in formations elders claimed to have never witnessed before. Most telling were the oracle, Owen's ancient divination tools kept by the shamans. Without being cast, they rearranged themselves, overnight into patterns that hadn't been seen in living memory. The oldest shaman, White Feather, found them aligned in the spiral path symbol matching Nayeli's amulet. The spirits speak loudly, she told Chief Helaku privately. They grow impatient with our deliberation. Confined to Chaskay's dwelling, Nayeli and Chaskay heard of these occurrences only through occasional visitors, primarily children sent with food or messages, their curiosity overcoming the adults' caution. Tadi's little sister is better, announced 8-year-old Kimi, delivering fresh bread one morning. The cough that wouldn't leave for a moon cycle disappeared the day after you went to council. That is good news, Chaskay replied, breaking the bread to share with Nayeli. Mother says it happened right after Nayeli walked past our dwelling, Kimi added, eyes wide. She says the outsider lady has healing in her shadow. After the child departed, Nayeli raised an eyebrow. Healing in my shadow? People find explanations that fit their understanding, Chaskay said. But I've noticed my medicines work more potently when you've touched the herbs. This observation hung between them, neither willing to fully acknowledge its implications. That afternoon, Elder Nahila arrived, guided by her grandchild. Though blind, she moved with certainty to the spot where Nayeli sat mending clothing. The council remains divided, she said without preamble. Some see the signs clearly, others refuse to look. I must know more of your dreams, child. Nayeli described her recurring visions, the spring, Chaskay's face, the joining of healing forces, the winter spirits appeased through ceremony. And you, Chaskay? Nahila turned her clouded eyes toward him. What have your dreams shown? The same, he admitted. with one addition consequences if the ceremony doesn't occur. I see our people suffering, a winter returning with greater fury, balance destroyed for generations. Nayeli nodded slowly. The oracle bones show similar outcomes. She reached into her pouch, withdrawing a small leather bundle. Last night, I cast the bones privately. They formed this pattern. She unwrapped the bundle, revealing 4 ancient bone fragments. Their placement mirrored exactly the central symbols on Nayeli's amulet and the bark scroll. Too precise for coincidence, Chaskay murmured. Yes, Nayeli agreed. The spirits confirm your interpretation of the prophecy. She rewrapped the bones carefully, but many on the council fear change more than they fear spirits. Particularly Kitchi, who believes our strength comes from rigid adherence to tradition. And Makaya? Nayeli asked. He seems to carry personal animosity. A smile ghosted across Nayeli's face. Perceptive. Makya was passed over as medicine man, despite his talents. He believes if Chaskay falls from favor, the position might yet be his. After Nayeli departed, more visitors arrived, first the mother of the healed child, bringing smoked meat and quiet thanks. Then 2 hunters reporting unusual animal behavior. Finally, 3 elders who studied Nayeli with undisguised curiosity while pretending to consult Chaskay on tribal matters. That night, as they prepared for sleep, Chaskay's medicine pouch began emitting a soft blue glow, matching the light that occasionally emanated from Nayeli's amulet. Neither commented, but both recognized another sign. Tomorrow I will request a private audience with Chief Heliku, Chaskay said, hanging the glowing pouch carefully on its peg. These manifestations grow stronger. If we don't address the prophecy soon, events may overtake our deliberations. Do you believe the chief will listen? Nayeli asked. Heliku is pragmatic. If enough evidence accumulates, he will act regardless of opposition. Chaskay extinguished the dwelling's central fire, leaving only the spirit light of their artifacts illuminating the darkness. The question is whether understanding will come before or after suffering begins. Outside, a wolf howled soon, joined by the cry of a hawk, an impossible pairing that sent chills through both listeners. Predator and prey, calling together in harmonious voice. The barriers between worlds thin, Chaskay whispered. We have little time. Restricted to Chaskay's dwelling, yet no longer facing immediate judgment, Nayeli and Chaskay established a daily rhythm. Mornings began with shared prayers, his to the mountain spirits, hers to the rising sun. Different words but similar reverence. They prepared meals together, Nayeli contributing cooking techniques from her people, while Chaskay provided local ingredients. Villagers still brought ailments to Chaskay's door, and Nayeli began assisting with treatments. Her gentle touch calmed fretful children, and her knowledge of eastern mountain herbs complemented his healing traditions. Together, they created remedies more effective than either could produce alone. My mother was a healer, she explained one afternoon as they rapped. A poultice for an elder's arthritis. She taught me to listen to plants. Each has a voice telling how it wishes to be used. My teacher spoke similarly, Chaskay replied, surprised by the parallel. He said medicine is not something we create, but something we discover through respectful attention. Their conversations revealed numerous such commonalities between their separated tribes. Both shared stories of the Great Journey, when their ancestors had traveled from northern lands. Both maintained ceremonial dances to honor deer spirits before hunting. Both considered owls messengers between worlds. One evening, returning from gathering fresh snow for drinking water, Chaskay found a beautifully crafted blanket laid across his sleeping area. The two-spirit blanket featured intricate weaving, combining masculine and feminine designs, symbols of unity traditionally created for sacred ceremonies. Where did this come from? He asked, fingering the fine workmanship. Nayeli looked equally puzzled. It was here when I returned from sorting herbs. I assumed you had placed it. Neither had any explanation for the blanket's appearance, yet both recognized its significance traditionally given to couples, whose union balanced opposing forces into harmonious whole. That night, seated before the fire, they found themselves sharing deeper stories. Chaskay spoke of his childhood calling to medicine, of loneliness that accompanied his position, of questions that sometimes plagued him about paths not taken. I sometimes wonder about family, he admitted quietly. Medicine. Men may marry, but few do. The demands of healing leave little room for personal bonds. My grandmother said the strongest healers carry a particular solitude, Nayeli offered, that their capacity to hold others' pain requires space unfilled by ordinary attachments. Your grandmother was wise. Yet I have wondered if that teaching serves the healer or merely preserves tradition. Nayeli nodded thoughtfully. I too have walked apart in some ways. Dreams marked me as different. Children my age found me strange speaking of visions, knowing which plants called to which ailments. Firelight cast warm shadows across their faces as silence settled comfortably between them. When Chaskay reached for more wood, their hands accidentally met. Neither pulled away immediately, the brief contact sending warmth, unlike ordinary touch, through both. The mysterious blanket seemed to shimmer in response. The prophecy, Nayeli said finally, speaks of union between healer and wanderer. What exactly does this mean for us? Chaskay considered carefully before answering. I believe it requires partnership, combining our medicines, our traditions, our understandings. Beyond that, double quotes, he hesitated. The scrolls suggest a more personal joining, but interpretation varies. In my tribe, she said, not meeting his eyes, such prophecies often culminate in marriage ceremony, joining bloodlines to strengthen spiritual connections. The implication hung in the air between them, not unwelcome but weighty with consequence. If that proves true, Chaskay said gently, it should arise from genuine bond, not mere fulfillment of prophecy. Nayeli's smile conveyed both relief and something warmer. Agreed. Later, preparing for sleep on opposite sides of the dwelling is propriety. Demanded, Chaskay noticed how the two-spirit blanket seemed to glow faintly when either of them touched it. Another sign, though whether warning or blessing remained unclear. What was becoming increasingly clear, however, was the natural ease between them, a connection transcending their different origins and current predicament. Whether forged by shared circumstance or guided by ancient prophecy, something genuine was growing that neither had anticipated. Outside, the night air carried unusual warmth for winter. Snow began melting from rooftops, despite the season another inexplicable sign of shifting balance. The spirit world was responding to their developing bond, for better or worse. While bonds strengthened between Chaskay and Nayeli, Makya moved through the village with purpose, whispering concerns to receptive ears. The young apprentice healer had studied under Chaskay for 7 years, mastering basic medicines, but denied the deeper spiritual knowledge reserved for the tribe's chosen. Medicine man, have you noticed the unnatural warmth? He asked a group of hunters preparing their equipment. Snow melts though, winter should hold firm. The balance of seasons falters, while an outsider remains among us. He visited mothers with young children, his handsome face arranged in expressions of concern. Strange illness may follow strange weather. He warned, outsiders carry unfamiliar sicknesses. Be watchful of your little ones. To elders troubled by changing traditions, he spoke of sacred laws undermined, of dangerous precedent. If our medicine man ignores one boundary, what others might crumble? What protects our ways when guardians abandon their posts? Each conversation planted seeds of doubt, watered by existing fears and uncertainties. By nightfall, Makya had secured the support of 12 influential tribe members, not enough to challenge the chief directly, but sufficient to create pressure for action. In the privacy of his small dwelling, Makya unwrapped a leather bundle hidden beneath his sleeping mat. Inside lay the poison root, a rare plant whose milky sap caused severe illness resembling winter fever. Not deadly in small amounts, but debilitating, convincingly natural in its symptoms. His plan had formed gradually as he observed the growing acceptance of Nayeli. If she fell ill shortly after using her healing touch on a respected elder, questions would inevitably arise about contamination, about outsider influence, about Chaskay's judgment in allowing her to participate in tribal healing. Not enough to kill, Makya murmured, carefully scraping dried sap into a small clay pot. Just enough to demonstrate the danger. His resentment toward Chaskay had festered for years, beginning when the tribe selected Makya for apprenticeship, but denied him full succession rights. Despite diligent study and natural talent, he remained forever secondary, watching as the aging medicine man received honor and respect that Makya believed increasingly undeserved. The arrival of Nayeli and subsequent disruption created perfect opportunity. If Makya could discredit both healer and wanderer, the tribe might reconsider leadership of sacred medicine, particularly if Makya himself provided the solution to whatever crisis emerged. A soft knock interrupted his preparation. Quickly concealing the poison, he opened his door to find Kichi, eldest male on the council and staunchest defender of tradition. "You were right to express concerns," the old man said without greeting. "The council wavers in its resolve. Some now speak of prophecy and spirit signs." "Superstition," Makya replied, echoing Kichi's earlier dismissal at council. "What evidence supports these claims beyond coincidence and wishful interpretation?" Nahila's influence grows. She speaks of oracle bones and ancient patterns. Kichi's face tightened with disapproval. Even Heliku listens now. Then we must provide stronger evidence of danger. Makya chose his words carefully. "I have observed unusual symptoms among those who have had contact with the outsider. Nothing serious, yet but concerning patterns." This was fabrication, but Kichi's eager nod showed the lie found fertile ground. "Document these occurrences." The council meets again in 3 days to render final judgment. After the elder departed, Makya returned to his preparations with renewed determination. 3 days provided ample time to implement his strategy. The village's largest gathering would occur tomorrow, a ceremony thanking spirits for surviving White Death. Both Chaskay and Nayeli had received permission to attend under guard. The perfect opportunity. As Makya worked, he failed to notice subtle changes in the poison root. Its normally white sap had darkened to grayish-black, its cut surfaces emitting faint luminescence. The plant was responding to spiritual disruption, its properties altering in ways the apprentice healer's limited knowledge couldn't recognize. Outside his dwelling, a sudden wind arose, whistling with almost vocal quality. Had Makya understood the old language of air spirits, he might have recognized the warning: those who oppose destined union invite winter's wrath. Instead, he mistook the ominous sound for endorsement of his plans. Carefully storing the prepared poison in a small pouch, Makya smiled with anticipation. By tomorrow night, the tribe would see the outsider as harbinger of sickness rather than healing. By the council meeting, they would demand her removal. And Chaskay, tainted by association and failed judgment, would finally lose his untouchable status. The village gathering began at midday beneath unusually dark skies. Despite the recent warming trend, temperatures suddenly plummeted as the ceremony commenced. Wind gusted from all directions simultaneously, a phenomenon elders murmured was impossible by natural means. Chief Heliku had just raised his arms to begin the Thanksgiving prayer when the first frost crystal materialized. It appeared inside the council lodge, forming on the central post a geometric ice structure of perfect symmetry, glowing with faint blue light. Within moments, Similar crystals formed inside other dwellings across the village. "Winter spirits," gasped Elder Nayeli, her blind eyes somehow tracking the crystal's growth. They announced their presence. The ceremonial drums faltered as murmurs spread through the gathered tribe. Chaskay and Nayeli exchanged glances, both recognizing the significance. The prophecy scroll had described these exact manifestations ice, forming where no moisture existed, perfect crystals growing against natural law. Before anyone could respond appropriately, an elderly man collapsed near the communal fire, then a young mother, then 2 children. Within moments, 6 villagers lay unconscious, their skin rapidly cooling despite proximity to flames. "Help them," Helaku commanded, looking to Chaskay. Without hesitation, Chaskay moved to examine the fallen, Nayeli at his side despite the guards, assigned to monitor her movements. Together, they checked vital signs, communicating in the shorthand of experienced healers. "Spirit cold," Chaskay diagnosed, recognizing symptoms described in ancient texts, but never before witnessed. "Their life warmth drains away." Nayeli confirmed his assessment. "My grandmother spoke of this. When winter spirits feed on human essence," Makia pushed forward. "How convenient that this outsider recognizes an illness that strikes just as she moves freely among us." His accusation found purchase among frightened observers. Suspicious glances turned toward Nayeli, who continued working despite them, her hands moving skillfully over an unconscious child. "This is no natural sickness," she stated firmly. "No contagion spreads this way." More villagers collapsed as frost crystals multiplied throughout the village. Temperatures dropped so rapidly that water froze in drinking vessels. The ceremonial fire itself burned lower, as if starved of essence beyond mere oxygen. "What do?" "We do?" Helaku demanded, authority momentarily eclipsed by unprecedented crisis. Chaskay met Nayeli's eyes. A wordless communication passed between them, understanding that temporary measures would not suffice. "We must combine our medicines," Chaskay announced. "Eastern mountain knowledge with our tribe's healing ways." Without waiting for permission, they began a joint healing ritual never before performed. Chaskay provided sacred herbs from his medicine pouch, while Nayeli added chants from her people's tradition. They worked in seamless harmony, as if having practiced together for years rather than days. As their combined energy focused, the unconscious victims began showing signs of improvement. Color returned to ashen faces. Breathing deepened. The frost crystals nearest the treatment area diminished slightly. Makia watched with barely concealed fury, a pouch of poison still hidden in his clothing, his plan disrupted by this larger crisis. His opportunity to discredit Nayeli had transformed into a moment of validation. "Look!" cried a child, pointing skyward above the village. Clouds formed impossible patterns, spirals and straight lines, matching the symbols on Nayeli's amulet. The wind carried sounds like distant voices, speaking in an ancient tongue few could still understand. "Elder," Nayeli translated for those gathered. "They say the balance breaks. The old agreement shatters. The price of forgetting will be paid in full." As if punctuating her words, a massive ice formation crashed through the roof of an empty dwelling, destroying it completely. No natural accumulation could explain the perfectly formed spear of ice larger than 3 men. "The spirits grow angry," Nayeli continued, her voice carrying despite its softness. "They say the healer and wanderer must complete their joining before the moon reaches fullness, or all will perish in eternal winter." The tribe's divided reaction was immediate. Some moved closer to Chaskay and Nayeli, recognizing their effective intervention. Others backed away, fear of the unknown overwhelming reason. Chief Helaku raised his hands for silence. "We will discuss interpretation of these events in council. For now, tend to the afflicted." Chaskay leaned close to Nayeli as they continued. "Healing efforts. The spirits grow impatient with human deliberation, he whispered. They care nothing for tribal politics. We have 3 days until full moon, she replied. But I fear the council may not reach decision in time. Around them, frost crystals continued forming, each one larger than the last. The winter spirits were awake, angry, and done waiting for humans to honor forgotten promises. Despite their successful intervention during the crisis, Chaskay and Nayeli found themselves facing renewed suspicion the following morning. Makya had worked tirelessly through the night, whispering to influential tribe members, suggesting the spirit's wrath might be punishment for allowing an outsider access to sacred knowledge rather than, as Nahila interpreted, demand for union between healer and wanderer. While most afflicted villagers had recovered under their combined care, 2 elders remained critically ill, giving weight to fears about supernatural displeasure. The tribe's anxiety created perfect conditions for Makya's final gambit. As Chaskay and Nayeli returned to his dwelling after checking on patients, Makya approached with 2 council members and several warriors. We found this, he announced loudly, producing a small ceremonial pouch, hidden among the outsider's possessions. Chaskay immediately recognized the item, a medicine bundle, containing sacred herbs accessible only to fully initiated healers. Its presence among Nayeli's belongings would constitute theft of spiritual knowledge. I've never seen that before, Nayeli protested, recognizing the implication. Search their dwelling, ordered Elder Kitc. The warriors complied, emerging minutes later with the split stone, a sacred tribal marker normally kept in the council lodge, now somehow in Chaskay's medicine cabinet, the stones perfectly straight. Division down its center seemed an ominous sign, as if prophesying separation. Explanation? Demanded Kitchi. I have none, Chaskay replied honestly. This stone has never been in my possession. Skeptical murmurs spread among gathering observers. Even those who had witnessed their healing prowess now looked uncertain. Chief Halaku arrived, his expression grave. These are serious discoveries. They were planted, Chaskay stated firmly. Someone seeks to discredit us. Convenient accusation, Makya responded. Or perhaps the winter spirits themselves moved these items to show their displeasure at forbidden sharing of knowledge. Nayeli stepped forward. Test us. Ask us to perform healing rituals no outsider could know. My knowledge comes from my own traditions, not stolen secrets. Before Halaku could respond, Elder Nahila pushed through the crowd, agitation evident in her normally calm demeanor. Fools, she chastised. The split stone appears because division threatens us all. Can you not read the signs? We read evidence of transgression, Kitchi countered. The crowd's size had grown, tension palpable. Some voiced support for Chaskay and Nayeli, others called for traditional punishment. The tribe fractured visibly before Halaku's eyes, exactly as the prophecy warned. Enough, the chief commanded. The council will convene immediately. He turned to Chaskay and Nayeli. Until judgment is rendered, you will be separated. The woman will be housed in the morning shelter at village edge. Chaskay will remain in his dwelling under guard. Chief Halaku, Chaskay protested, separation may worsen the spirit's anger. The frost crystals grow larger each hour. Then the council must decide quickly, Halaku replied. His eyes conveyed understanding, but his voice remained firm. This is my compromise to prevent worse division. As warriors moved to escort Nayeli away, she locked eyes with Chaskay. Their brief connection conveyed everything words could not concern. Resolve and something deeper that neither had fully acknowledged. 2 days remain until full moon, she said quietly. The morning shelter stood isolated beyond the last dwellings, a simple structure used by grieving family members seeking solitude. As Nayeli was led away, the split stone in Kitchi's hands suddenly cracked further, fragments falling to the ground. Many gasped at this clear spiritual message. But interpretation remained divided. From his guarded position, Chaskay watched Nayeli disappear from view. Immediately, he felt physical pain as if vital energy drained from his body. The prophecy had warned of this. Separated, their individual powers would weaken precisely when needed most. That night, the temperature plummeted further. New frost crystals formed, larger and more complex. 3 more villagers succumbed to spirit cold. Without Nayeli's complementary knowledge, Chaskay's treatments proved only partially effective. From her isolated shelter, Nayeli watched ice formations encase surrounding trees. She attempted private healing rituals, but found her abilities diminished without Chaskay's presence. In desperation, both independently attempted to communicate through animal messengers. Chaskay whispering instructions to a raven, Nayeli forming connection with a young fox. Whether these efforts succeeded remained unclear as darkness deepened across the troubled village. In his dwelling, Makia smiled with satisfaction despite growing chaos. His scheme had worked perfectly. The pair separated, their credibility damaged, the tribe divided. Yet as he prepared for sleep, unprecedented cold penetrated his blankets. A frost crystal formed directly above his head, larger than any seen before. The winter spirits had noticed his interference, and their judgment would come swiftly. Dawn revealed a village transformed. Massive ice formations had erupted from the ground overnight, piercing dwellings and forcing families to abandon homes. The sacred spring, ever known to freeze in living memory, had solidified into a twisted spire of ice that seemed to reach accusingly toward the sky. Frost crystals now appeared in every dwelling, some growing large enough to block doorways. In the council lodge, the ancestral shield, a ceremonial object passed through generations of chiefs, developed a network of cracks across its surface. The shield, made from hardened leather, reinforced with mountain sheep horn, had withstood countless battles and decades of ceremonial use without damage. Its spontaneous deterioration struck deep fear into even the most skeptical council members. "We cannot deny the signs any longer," Chief Helaku declared as the council gathered in emergency session. "Something ancient and powerful has awakened." Elder Kitchi, still resistant despite mounting evidence, pointed toward the morning shelter, where Nayeli remained isolated. Perhaps removing the outsider entirely would appease these spirits. "Fool," Nahila's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Have you understood nothing? The winter spirits demand union, not separation. Each hour we delay brings greater wrath." As if confirming her words, the temperature dropped suddenly. The council lodge's fire dimmed despite ample fuel. Outside, another elder collapsed, frost forming on his eyelashes within moments of losing consciousness. The count of afflicted had reached 17, primarily the very young and very old. Chaskay worked tirelessly despite his guard, but without Nayeli's complementary knowledge, his treatments merely stabilized victims rather than healing them completely. His own strength visibly diminished with each passing hour. Makia, initially triumphant at the pair's separation, now found himself overwhelmed trying to assist with mounting casualties. His knowledge, though considerable, proved inadequate against spirit cold. When a young patient died, despite his best efforts, the first fatality, Makia's confidence cracked. Haunted by the child's still face, he approached the council, interrupting their heated debate. "I must speak," he announced, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. The council fell silent, surprised by his unexpected interruption. "The sacred items found among the outsider's possessions. Double quote. He paused, gathering courage. "I placed them there." Gasps and murmurs filled the lodge. Chief Helaku's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You deliberately deceived the council?" "I believed I acted for the tribe's protection," Makia replied, unable to meet the chief's gaze. "I feared the outsider's influence on our medicine man, on our traditions." "Your fear and ambition may doom us all," Nahila stated, her blind eyes somehow finding and holding him accountable. Outside, the unnatural cold intensified. Warriors reported ice formations now blocked the main path from the village. Food stores had frozen solid, and drinking water remained accessible only by melting ice over fires that burned with increasing difficulty. The ancestral shields, cracks widened visibly as the council absorbed Makia's confession. We must reunite them immediately, Halaku decided, rising to his feet. Prepare for the ceremony Nayeli described. There may be complications, a warrior interrupted, entering the lodge. The outsider is gone. What? Several voices spoke simultaneously. The morning shelter stands empty. Footprints lead into the forest, but the trail disappears amid ice formations. Chaskay, informed of Nayeli's disappearance, closed his eyes in silent communication with the spirits. When he opened them, determination had replaced exhaustion. She seeks me, he stated with certainty. Our spirits call to each other, even when physically separated. How can you know this? Kichi demanded. The same way I know she travels north along the ridge path, Chaskay replied. The spirits show me her journey. Halaku made his decision. Quickly, gather the strongest warriors. We will find her and return her safely. I must go, Chaskay insisted. You are still under. Without me, you will not find her, Chaskay interrupted. And every moment we delay, more suffer. To emphasize his point, a tremendous cracking sound echoed through the village as a massive ice formation split the central gathering area in two. Children cried out in terror as adults struggled to maintain calm. The ancestral shield in Halaku's hands suddenly split completely in half, the final omen needed to overcome remaining resistance. Go, the chief commanded Chaskay. Find her. Complete what must be done. As Chaskay departed with the search party, those remaining in the village prepared for whatever ceremony might be required upon their return. The most skeptical now worked alongside the most superstitious, united by desperation, as their world literally cracked around them. In his dwelling, Makia gathered healing supplies, his face haunted by consequences of his actions. The frost crystal above his sleeping place had grown to fill half the ceiling, a constant reminder of spirit's judgment still to come. Chaskay moved through the forest with single-minded determination, outpacing the warriors who accompanied him. The cold that sapped others' strength seemed unable to touch him now that purpose drove his steps. He followed no visible trail, but moved with absolute certainty, guided by an internal compass that connected him to Nayeli. How much farther? Called one warrior, struggling through snow that reached his thighs. Beyond the northern ridge, Chaskay replied without slowing. She travels toward Spirit Lake. The warriors exchanged meaningful glances. Spirit Lake was sacred ground, a place of power where, according to legend, the tribe had first made covenant with mountain spirits generations ago. No coincidence that Nayeli would be drawn there. As they climbed higher, conditions worsened. Wind howled with almost human voice, ice particles stinging exposed skin. Two warriors turned back, unable to continue against the supernatural storm. The remaining three pressed on behind Chaskay, their respect for the medicine man growing with each impossible step he took. When Chaskay suddenly stopped, the warriors nearly collided with him. Before them stretched a vast field of ice spires, hundreds of jagged formations, creating an impassable maze. She's beyond this, Chaskay stated, frustration evident in his voice. But there's no path through. The lead warrior stepped forward. Then we returned to the village and approached from another direction. No time, Chaskay replied, studying the ice barrier. A raven circled overhead 3 times before landing on a nearby branch. Chaskay's eyes followed its movement, understanding dawning on his face. Return to the village, he instructed the warriors. Tell Halaku, I go alone from here. Our orders cannot be fulfilled, Chaskay interrupted. This barrier exists to prevent all but me from passing. The spirits have made their will clear." Reluctantly, the warriors retreated. Once alone, Chaskay approached the wall of ice, placing his palm against its surface. "I am the healer," he spoke in the ancient language. "I seek the wanderer to fulfill what was promised." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like distant singing, a narrow passage opened between the spires, just wide enough for one person to traverse sideways. Chaskay entered without hesitation, the passage sealing behind him. The journey through the ice maze took hours, each turn revealing new challenges. Thin ice bridges over seemingly bottomless chasms, narrow tunnels requiring him to crawl, chambers where multiple identical exits tested his intuition. Throughout, he felt Nayeli's presence growing stronger. Their connection, established in just days yet feeling like lifetimes, pulled him forward when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. Finally, the maze opened to a clearing where Spirit Lake should have been. Instead, he found a perfect circle of bare ground surrounded by towering walls of ice. In the center stood Nayeli, her back to him, arms raised toward the sky in what he recognized as an Eastern Apache prayer stance. "Nayeli," he called softly. She turned, relief flooding her features. "You came. Did you doubt I would?" "No." Her simple answer contained complete truth. "I knew you would find me. The spirits have been showing me the way since I escaped the shelter." They moved toward each other slowly, both aware of the significance of their reunion. When they stood face to face, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Above, storm clouds parted momentarily, allowing a shaft of sunlight to illuminate them perfectly. "I didn't flee the village out of fear," Nayeli explained. "The frost crystal in my shelter formed words in the ancient language, instructions to come here to prepare the sacred ground. For the ceremony," Chaskay nodded. "The joining the prophecy." Foretold. Between them, their artifacts began to glow, her amulet and his medicine pouch resonating with matching light. When Chaskay reached out, Nayeli took his hand without hesitation. At their touch, the Unity Pipa ceremonial object, neither had brought materialized on a flat stone between them, its bowl spontaneously igniting with sacred herbs. "The spirits provide what is needed," Chaskay observed with awe. The ice walls surrounding them reflected their joined image thousands of times, multiplying their united form across the landscape. The wind's howl softened to melodic humming, ancient songs not heard for generations. "We should return to the village," Nayeli suggested. "Complete the ceremony among your people." "Our people," Chaskay corrected gently. "The prophecy bridges our separated tribes as it bridges our individual paths." As they turned to leave, the ice maze that had challenged Chaskay transformed before their eyes, forming a clear, direct path back toward the village. Their joined hands created visible energy, a soft glow that illuminated their way through. Gathering darkness. Behind them, Spirit Lake began to thaw, water breaking through ice with sounds like joyful laughter. Ahead, the village awaited still in danger, but with hope now approaching in the form of prophecy fulfilled. The village erupted in activity when lookouts spotted Chaskay and Nayeli approaching hand in hand. Their journey back had been remarkably swift, the path clearing before them as if nature itself hastened their return. As they entered the village boundaries, both felt the immediate intensity of the spiritual disturbance frost crystals had overtaken entire dwellings, and nearly 30 villagers now lay afflicted with spirit cold. Chief Helaku met them at the edge of the central gathering area, now divided by a massive ice formation. "You'll return just in time," he said gravely. "We lose ground by the hour." Nahila appeared at his side, her aged face showing rare urgency. "The moon rises full tonight. The ceremony must begin at once." While they had been gone, the blind elder had directed preparations according to her understanding of ancient texts. At the village center, Directly between the split halves of the gathering area stood the prophecy stone, a flat ceremonial altar excavated from storage, where it had rested untouched for generations. The stone tablet was etched with the same spiral path symbol found on Nayeli's amulet and bore shallow depressions meant to hold sacred objects. It glowed when uncovered, Nayeli explained. The first sign we had properly interpreted the prophecy. Villagers brought ceremonial attire for both Chaskay and Nayeli, his traditional medicine man regalia for him, and for her, ceremonial dress combining elements from both their tribes. The garments had been hastily created under Nayeli's direction. Women working through the night to complete them got as they changed in separate dwellings. Chaskay noticed the frost crystals retreating slightly in his presence. His strength, diminished during their separation, had returned fuller than before. In the dwelling where Nayeli prepared, helpers reported similar phenomena: ice melting, temperatures moderating. When they emerged, the entire tribe had gathered despite the bitter cold. Even the afflicted had been carried out on pallets to witness what many now believed was their only hope for survival. Makya stood apart, his face showing the weight of his actions, but present nonetheless. Haloku began the ceremony with ancient words of invocation, calling upon mountain spirits and ancestors to witness. The tribe formed a circle around the prophecy stone, where Chaskay and Nayeli now stood facing each other. 4 elders took positions at cardinal directions, each holding elements representing fundamental forces: fire, water, earth, and air. The prophecy speaks of renewal, Nayeli intoned, her voice carrying surprising strength, of healing the breach between our people and the winter spirits, formed when ancient promises were forgotten. As she spoke, the prophecy stone began to emit soft blue light. The same luminescence appeared in Nayeli's amulet and Chaskay's medicine pouch. Above, the full moon cleared momentarily from storm clouds, bathing the gathering in silver light. What was the forgotten promise? Halaku asked, following the ceremonial script Nayeli had prepared. Balance, Chaskay answered, the knowledge suddenly clear in his mind. Our ancestors promised to maintain balance between seasons, between peoples, between worlds. How was this balance broken? Came the next ritual question. Separation, Nayeli replied, understanding flowing between them. When our tribes divided, when traditions became rigid, when we forgot we are one people under different skies. The ceremonial exchange continued, ancient truths emerging through their joined understanding. Each response caused the prophecy stone to glow brighter, ice formations throughout the village to recede slightly. Then came the central act, the exchange of sacred items representing their separate traditions, placed together on the stone. Nayeli removed her amulet, placing it in the left depression. Chaskay added herbs from his medicine pouch to the right. Finally, between them, they placed the unity pipe that had manifested during their reunion. Now begins the joining, Nayeli announced. A bond of spirit, of purpose, of future. The ritual required them to speak vows simultaneously in their respective tribal dialects, phrases that, though different in sound, carried identical meaning about commitment to healing, to balance, to each other. As they spoke the words, energy visibly gathered around them, a swirling luminescence that incorporated the blue of the prophecy stone, the silver of moonlight, the amber of ceremonial fire. The light column extended skyward, piercing storm clouds. But as the ceremony reached its climax, darkness gathered at the village perimeter. Ice formations that had been retreating suddenly advanced again. Wind rose with renewed fury. The winter spirits, sensing the impending restoration of balance, mounted final resistance. Elders struggled to maintain their positions as gale-force winds threatened to topple them. The ceremonial fire flickered dangerously low. Frost crystals grew with unnatural speed toward the ceremonial circle. They resist the binding, Nayeli shouted above the tempest. The winter spirits fight the restoration of balance. Within their column of light, Chaskay and Nayeli remain untouched by the chaos, their joined hands forming the final seal necessary to complete the ceremony. But all around them, the tribe faced the full wrath of ancient forces unwilling to relinquish their power. At the height of the spiritual battle, when it seemed the winter spirits might overpower the ceremony, Makia stepped forward from the crowd. His face showed resolution as he approached the perimeter of swirling energy. "The destruction began with my actions," he called above the howling wind. "Let me help end it." Without waiting for response, he thrust his hands into the maelstrom of ice and light surrounding Chaskay and Nayeli. Pain contorted his features as frost crawled up his arms, but he held firm, creating a channel through which his own life energy flowed into the ceremonial circle. His sacrifice broke the final resistance. The column of light surrounding Chaskay and Nayeli expanded explosively, enveloping the entire village in momentary brilliance. When the light receded seconds later, profound silence fell. The storm had vanished completely. Ice formations dissolved like morning mist. Above, stars shone in perfectly clear skies, the full moon illuminating a transformed landscape. At the center of it all stood Chaskay and Nayeli, still hand in hand, their faces reflecting wonder and exhaustion. Dot between them on the prophecy stone, where their sacred items had been placed, now rested a single new object, the harmony bowl, a vessel of unknown material filled with clear water from the sacred spring. Steam rose from its surface, despite the winter air, carrying scents of healing herbs and spring blossoms. Makia lay unconscious nearby, his sacrifice evident in the frost patterns marking his skin, yet his chest rose and fell with steady breath. Throughout the village, those afflicted with spirit cold awakened, as if from deep sleep, color returning to their faces, strength flowing back into their limbs. Elder Mahila approached the harmony bowl, her blind eyes somehow seeing its significance. "The covenant is renewed," she announced. "The balance restored." Dawn broke earlier than natural law should allow, golden light spilling across the mountains. Birds returned to trees that hours earlier had stood encased in ice. The sacred spring, frozen solid just yesterday, now flowed with greater vigor than living memory recalled Dot in the days that followed. Healing spread throughout the tribe. Damaged dwellings were repaired, stronger than before. The split in the central gathering area filled with fresh soil in which early spring plants emerged despite the season. The ancestral shield, broken during the crisis, was found mysteriously restored, its surface now bearing the spiral path symbol that united their histories. Chaskay and Nayeli moved among the people, their combined healing knowledge addressing ailments long considered untreatable. The union formed during the ceremony manifested not only in their complementary medicines, but in the easy harmony of their movements, their thoughts, their purpose. A week after the ceremony, Chief Heliku called the tribe together. Makia, recovered from his ordeal, stood nearby, his face showing the peace of redemption. "The prophecy has been fulfilled," Heliku announced. "Balance returns to our people, to our mountains, to our spirits." He turned to Chaskay and Nayeli. "What happens now must be your choice." Nayeli stepped forward. "When spring fully arrives, I must seek my family. They should know I live, that our peoples can be reunited." "I will accompany her," Chaskay added, "then return with her and any who wish to join us." The prophecy speaks not just of immediate healing, but of ongoing unity. Heliku nodded approval. Two medicine traditions, stronger together than apart. As it was in the beginning? That evening, as the couple sat before their dwelling now expanded to accommodate their shared work, Chaskay noticed subtle changes in Nayeli's amulet. New symbols had appeared alongside the original markings, telling the story of their joining for future generations. "What do you think your family will say about taking a husband from another band?" he asked, still marveling at how natural their Union felt despite its extraordinary beginnings. Nayeli smiled, touching the amulet. My grandmother always said I would find my path where the healing waters meet the mountain dreams. I think she knew more than she revealed. From the sacred spring came sounds of gentle laughter, water spirits expressing approval. Above, stars aligned in patterns meaningful to both their traditions. Around them, a village settled into peaceful slumber, villagers resting easier than they had in generations. The harmony bowl sat between them, its water reflecting moonlight. Occasionally, images formed on its surface, glimpses of future possibilities, of Eastern and Western Apache children playing together, of healing traditions expanding, of balance maintained not through rigid separation, but through respectful integration. It begins with us, Nayeli said softly, but continues long after. Chaskay nodded, taking her hand. Their fingers intertwined just as their destinies had, not erasing individual identity, but creating something stronger through conscious joining. From frozen isolation to warmth shared, he replied. The greatest medicine of all